Hey guys, how's it going? It's Cybertronian here, and today I just want to go over my loadouts for 2022. There's a very good chance I probably won't dedicate any of these loadouts to, actually using a lot, so either way, it's just some things I want to put together to make things match, have some type of season. With that being said, let's begin with Scout. So here, I have what I like to call the Freelance Scout Police. Now, the initial idea that I wanted to go with is, having a law enforcer like character or persona here. And considering I have the favorite characters of Sam and Max, Barricade, and even Prowl, both last two being from the Transformers series, I thought it'd be fitting to have a policeman as one of my loadouts. So you can see I added on the law, the stapler specs, and the license to maim. My second loadout in the B column is the speedy big man on campus. Of course, that's the name of the shirt, but basically he looks like the essential being of a track runner. Plus the boombox on the back I thought would fit pretty well, considering he'd be going fast, so we gotta be listening to some tunes while he'd be doing his running. In the C column, we have here the Blurple Scout. Now, being someone who's overly addicted to Shockwave, I wanted to go ahead and give the purple coloration, and so I have the unusual Troublemaker's Tossle cap, the Cool Cat cardigan, and the soda specs. Sorry to deviate for a second here, but I forgot to mention that in B column I have Front Runner, Big Man on Campus, and then Boston Boombringer. So yeah, this one's like Purple Scout, pretty much. And lastly, we have the Shockwave Scout. Of course, he has to be purple, so I got the visor and I got the fuel injector, which both being purple, it works pretty well. Not to mention the tube that connects to his back, which, it seems pretty fitting. And I just like the dark coloration because it works when it's dark like this. Alright, next up we have the soldier. Now, because I wanted to go with a Mexican-like soldier, I went ahead and put something together, but because they already had something like the party poncho, I wanted to mix it up a little here, so I have the El Zapador, the Soldier Stoogie, which you could see right here, and then the Diplomat. He kind of gives off that type of revolutionary vibe, considering all the additions that the Diplomat gives to the initial clothing articles. Next up, I have what I like to call Funky Kong. And of course for this we have the Dancing Doe, the Dues Specs, and the Tuxie. Considering that, well, Funky Kong himself, which I'm basing this off of the Donkey Kong Country TV show, he just has his do-rag, his sunglasses, and then the rest of him is all ape. And so I went ahead and just made him, wear this tuxie, make it look like, I didn't want to make it look so bare, and I didn't want this to be like 3 empty slots, so I just added that on to make it seem more full. Next up, we have initially I was going to go for a captain-like look. Like, I originally had, something else put on here. I was going to have the Lumbricus lid. I don't know, but apparently it wouldn't fit with anything else, and so I went ahead and opted for the team captain, and honestly, I kind of prefer this loadout over the other. Makes soldier look casual, but also a general who's strategizing and putting together the troops. See with the map back there with the battalions back up. It's minimal, but you know, it is what it is. And lastly, here we have the Conquistador. I know that's what that says, but I mean, just look at that. Tell me that doesn't say the Conquistador. It literally just works with the Conquistador, of course, the Dictator, and the Brawling Buccaneer. Next up, we have the PYRO. Now, because I didn't really have a beginning idea, I went off the Lime Game loadout because I do not change it, and so it stays. Next up, well, we have the Flavorful Baggies, which is lime green, the Water Waders, which also taste of defeat and lime, and the Bumblebee. We have the Pyro Brawler, essentially. He has the Firefighter, the Steel Six-Pack, and the Bone Doiler. Nothing too exciting, but I thought putting it together worked. Next up, we have the Chef. Of course, we have the Connoisseur Cap, the Hot Case, and the Gas Guzzler. Now, initially, I would have replaced the Backpack Broiler, but considering, well, he's not actively bringing his food around with him, I don't know, it felt like the Gas Guzzler would add a little bit more to that, but I think I may reconsider, actually. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and change this, and we'll pretend no one knows, okay? Okay. And lastly, we have yet another Spanish Bandito. We have the Skullbrero, the Whiskered Gentleman, and the Tuxie. Looks like quite a refined yet evil gentleman. We continue on with the Demoman. We have the Drip Demo with the Hustler's Hallmark, the Tomb Raiders, and the Man of the Seven Seas. This Demoman is a pimp, and if you get in his way, he'll blow you to smithereens. Next up, we have ourselves the Pirate, because he's the best damn pirate I've ever seen. We have the Tippler's Tricorn, a whiff of the Old Brimstone, and the Liquor Locker. Kind of fitting, considering the whole pirate aesthetic for him. And so, it works out. Rather than using the usual Buccaneer and the Man of the Seven Seas, since I already used that previously. Next up, we have the Viking. So, with this, we have the Spiky Viking, the Bushido, and the Sandgoose Leaves. Now, yes, I know, I probably should have used this for the Samurai, but, I mean, isn't that what that whole item combination was made for initially? So I wanted to change it up a little bit and give him the whole knight aesthetic. Especially considering that they don't really have any chainmail armor that isn't Halloween restricted as far as I know. And it also has to do with availability too, so you get what you see. And lastly, we have the Golfer. Or, you know, Demoman, but with a different form of hobby. So, of course, we have the Glengarry Bonnet, a nice typical hat for golfing. The Tuxie, gotta look big when you're going golfing. And then, of course, the Cool Breeze, because who doesn't like that type of stereotype for a golfer? Next up, we have the Heavy. So, for this, we have the Survivalist Heavy with the Soviet Gentleman, the Turtleneck, and the Gone Commando, which, of course, pulls off that aesthetic for a survivalist heavy. He's got everything he needs to bring the battle to the wilderness. Next up, we have my personal favorite heavy loadout, Shock Heavy. Crappy name, I know. I'll take those. I have the War Hood, which is painted a deep commitment to purple. Same thing with the Virtual Viewfinder. And lastly, the airborne attire. Initially, I would have just given him the SAR Platinum, or maybe even the... oh, what were they called? Borshut belt. But that made it look pretty empty, and so I wanted to add this to make it more full. Next on our list, we have the Metal Warrior. So essentially, he has the full head of steam, Die Regime Panzerung, and the Purity Fist. So, although this heavy does look kind of a contrasting look between all the metal stuff and the steampunk, I felt like it kind of worked in its own way. So the heavy's still intimidating, but it gives it that old-fashioned with the full head of steam. And lastly, we have the Brawling Heavy. So, initially, I wanted to, make it any of the other forms of tattoos and stuff, but because of the recent Popeye vs. Saitama, I thought I'd leave that in there for giving that some attention. Still gotta be my most favorite death battle of last year. So with this we have the Dictator, giving him a nice stash to put under the Pugilist's Protector, and the Soviet Strongman. Next up, we have the Fallout Engineer. So, for this, we have the Trencher's Topper, the Cold Case, and the Genuine Pip-Boy. So, I gave him a nice mix of different items, which would seem like they came out of, excuse me, Fallout New Vegas. Giving him a mix of the different references as well as something that would look like they'd wear around that time. Gives it a nice look for the loadout. Next up, we have the Sheriff of Town. These names are not going to be the official names, but this is what my brain went to when I decided to make these up. So, of course, we have the Texas 10-gallon, the Wild West waistcoat, and the Prairie Heel Biters. You got the hat, you got the Sheriff's badge with the vest, as well as the spurs. Next up, we have Master Roshi, or Master NG, or whatever you'd want to call it. So essentially, you have what puts together the Master Roshi loadout with the Wise Whiskers, the Alola Apparel, and the Professor Specs. Now, of course, because the Engineer doesn't have much other pants as far as I currently know, this is the best I could do for that loadout. But in its own little way, it still works out. And lastly, we have the NG of the Future, or NG in space, or whatever you'd like to call it. Personally, I just thought of Scooter, but nah. So, of course, we have the MK-50, the Rocket Operator, and the Rowboot. And all together, we have ourselves our own little futuristic engineer, ready for intergalactic space. Moving on, we have the Medic on Vacation, or Dr. Holiday. So, of course, we have the Das Guten Herren, the Doc's Holiday, and lastly, A Brush with Death. Now, of course, I could have just left this looking like Medic having his regular day off, but I wanted to go ahead and mix these all together and come up with something that gives Medic a little less holding him back from allowing himself to become more of an on vacation person. Give him a bigger haircut and let him grow out that beard and stash. And dress casually. Next on our list, we have, of course, the Plague Doctor. Now, despite it not being like all dark and whatnot, I mean, you don't always have to do that, so... I mean, this one's kind of stereotypical on its own, but it works out. He's making himself look like SCP-049, so it all works out in the end. With the nun hood, the blighted beak, and the genuine floppish physician. Next on our list, we have the old man medic. With the medic's mountain cap, the Z Ubermensch, and the vascular vestment, making him look quite ready to heal anyone around him. Giving the old style of medic healing. And lastly, we have the vaccination. We don't have the vaccinator, but deal with it. We have the gauzed gaze, the Das Feeling Better Badger, and lastly, the surgeon's sidearms. And this was something that I kind of like putting together in general, because it's not something that completely changes his look, but it gives him all the essentials of a cosmetic combination that I felt like kind of worked around at the time. So this is kind of one of those old favorite ones I like to put together. Our second loadout list includes the sniper. So the first one here, of course, I wanted to go with the Royal Guard, giving him the stovepipe sniper Shakao, the golden garment with noble hatter's violet, and the final frontiersman. Now given this is usually a nice combination. So the sniper is covered mostly, and also he does look like he's part of a royal group of different types of guards. Just something that I felt like worked well putting together. I just realized both of these are level 60. They're not very important, but they're level 60. Next up, we have, of course, that I was wanting to go with a bartender-like sniper, but that's just because of the rifle reference. I put this together instead of putting this together first, so that's kind of my fault. So with this, we have the brim full of bullets, the tuxie, and the Australian cami jammies. Or, just the cami jammies. It's strange, so that's what was put on there already. Next up, we have one of my personal favorite loadouts I was putting together and used for a while. Is the Desert Marauder with the Muscanil Brawn, the Birdman of Australicatraz, and the Triggerman's Tacticals. Seeing a sniper with a full loadout pants kind of like that, and then the rest of it too, kind of makes it good to put those all together and someone give it that color match. And something about the Desert Marauder was always a pleasant sniper loadout to add on to him, but it more has to do with the initial look of it rather than any other reason that I can't think of right now. And lastly, of course, we have Mr. Anger Issues. Of course, it just goes off the whole anger sniper being edgy and whatnot, but I kind of give it a decent look with the anger, the airborne attire, and the champ stamp. Because, I mean, what badass doesn't have a stamp, doesn't have a tattoo on him like that? Probably no one, but hey, it works out in its own way. And finally, last but not least, we have the spy. I almost said sniper again. So of course we have the detective, despite the name already, but I mean it just says it right here, all the loadout. The Belgian detective, the Spectre spectacles, and the Chicago overcoat. Next up, we have ourselves Mr. Casual, Mr. Pinstripe suit, if you would, giving him the Charmer's chapeau, the Assassin's attire, and the virtual viewfinder. So he's got mostly that whole shock vibe going on, with the deep commitment to purple being rather prominent. What can I say? I like purple, but not to the degree of lazy purple, because I don't want to steal his look. Next up, we have the Voodoo Spy, giving himself a nice voodoo, of course, look. Mr. Magic Man. You have the Voodoo Visor, the Showstopper, and the Lurker's Leathers. I thought the leathers would look kind of good with it, but I can already see there's a bit of clipping there, so that kind of deters me from thinking that. But as far as I'm aware, these are separate from each other enough to not be in the same cosmetic case, but in its own way, it kind of works out in the end. And finally, overall, I have the Spy Mayor. And the reason why I have this together was because this is one of those meme loadouts that I had the whole cosmetic set for, and then I just made it as ridiculous as I could make it look. So of course we have the Bloodhound, the Dapper Disguise, and the Lurking Legionnaire. And that's pretty much it. Those are loadouts that I will never dedicate any time to using in Team Fortress 2 for this year. Now, if you guys really do want to see me start using these cosmetics, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. And of course, for you guys, I'll be sure that I keep a hold of all the cosmetic put-togethers and see about how things go in the end. If you guys like this video, feel free to leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to click that bell notification button so you may be notified about the upcoming uploads. Within the next few weeks here, I will be finishing off Sonic Colors, as well as playing the other campaign for Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. And with that being said, if you guys have any recommendations on what you want to see me do for the next few videos, feel free to leave a comment down below for what you want to see. And with that being said, this has been Cybertronium Mobian, signing off.